I challenged myself to spend an entire week playing just movie tie-in video games. One day, one game. And believe me, it was a roller coaster of a week, as the games I picked were not random. I chose 3 of the best adaptations, 3 of the worst, and one that seems to have fans mixed. Some I played before, some I had the unfortunate privilege to experience for the first time. Obviously, there are way more games in this category, and maybe we'll do a part 2 in the future with your suggestions from the comments. As I knew I'd be in for a world of torture with some of these games, I decided to start the week off with something lighthearted. For day 1, I decided to delve into an animated movie, so I reached hardback for nostalgic reasons and chose Aladdin. Then I remembered Disney actually re-released Aladdin in 2019 alongside The Lion King, with their Disney Classic Games bundle, and I thought, what the hell, let's do both, why not? Now, this wasn't the first time I experienced these games, not even close. I beat these games in my childhood way more times than I can remember. My sister and I would take turns and spend entire days playing Aladdin, Lion King, Tarzan, Hercules, and the list goes on. But today I started my trip down memory lane on the streets of Agrabah. Now, the first thing that hit me when starting Aladdin was the absolutely gorgeous, timeless pixel art this game has. Just look at it. As I was a big fan of the movie, I realize now, just by playing this for a couple of minutes, why I was in awe as a kid playing this. The characters look so much like the cartoon, it's actually crazy. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this game, it's a side-scrolling platformer in which you take your boy Aladdin throughout locations from the movie. You obviously have to fight your way through the game, so at your disposal you have a regular sword attack. If I may, that's not a sword, that's actually a scimitar. And for long-range attacks you have apples. Yep, 2 apples per enemy and they're poof. Aladdin's health is represented by a trail of smoke coming out of the genie's lamp. Whenever you take damage, that trail shortens. Although I had to do it on purpose just for the sake of this video, otherwise I wouldn't even get hit once. That's a joke. Man, these games were hard. It's funny because I'm playing a Souls-like at the moment, and I swear Aladdin felt harder. The controls are obviously not as smooth, so you can't really let me solo her your way through Aladdin. Or maybe you can, I don't know. I definitely can't. In fact, I died way more times than I'm happy to admit. But these games were meant to be hard. If you know what you're doing, you can beat this whole game in less than 2 hours, so something needs to keep you at it for longer. Now, if I'm being completely honest, I wouldn't play this game again other than for nostalgia. It's not particularly fun to play, it's just fun to witness, if that makes sense. But my god, the game looks gorgeous. The attention to detail is spectacular. For instance, if you just do nothing, Aladdin goes into this idle animation. They didn't need to do that, but they did. Oh, and look at these balls. No, but for real, the animation here is just stunning to look at. Now, what was a hard reminder of how these games from this era operate was this. So I'm in the Cave of Wonders, my health is coming dangerously close to 0, and I have 0 Aladdin faces left. Okay. And then I die here. By the way, I love this death animation too. And then Jafar prompts me to give up. Sure, no problem. What? Title screen? Press start. Nah, we're not doing this again. Lion King for me has an even more important place in my heart. The levels of this game are just embedded in my brain so hard I think I could draw them from memory. I wish we had some kind of logs like an imaginary Steam that shows you how much you've played some games. I think I played this game for maybe 500 hours or so. Oh, and it's pretty much the same length as Aladdin. You can beat this game in about 2 hours as well. Now, it's hard for me not to repeat myself when I just talked about Aladdin because they're similar in so many ways. So I'll try not to linger too much through the Pride Lands. They both look absolutely gorgeous, they're both pretty hard games, they're both... Aww. Oh, and I forgot to mention the music. In Lion King and Aladdin, you practically have the entire magical soundtrack in chiptune 8-bit sound. If copyright wasn't a thing, you'd be able to hear it too. Now, if you've experienced this game before, tell me you don't remember this level by heart. I remember so well these giraffes, the monkeys, the rhinos, the way they tossed you like a volleyball. And this little pink ostrich race, I remember it perfectly. I know it like the back of my hand. Knew it. By the way, when you die in Lion King, why does young Simba look drunk? In any case, playing these titles back to back was a very pleasant trip down memory lane, and I needed it for what's to come. Nope, no, I'll deal with you later.
You split with this lovely girl, why? Or were you the dumb pig?
Let me put it this way. Leanne can be a little difficult.
Oh boy. Well, let's indeed discover what we're gonna do when they come for us. One more garbage game trying to cash in on a successful, great movie. Wait, what? Bad Boys 2 has a 38 on Metascore? Get that shit out of here, I don't care what anyone says. We all know Bad Boys 2 is fantastic. The game though...
I stay and deal with things.
Damn, there's a whole other thing going on here. You two can catch up later. We gotta fly after whoever did this.
Leave some for me.
Oh, don't worry about that, we will.
You, get out of here.
Well, Bad Boys 2, or Bad Boys Miami Takedown if you're playing the US version of the game, is actually scored even lower than that, sitting at a horrendous 35. And you know what? I kinda agree with that score. I wanna start with the graphics, but honestly, what is there to talk about? You'll see it with your own eyes throughout my gameplay, unfortunately. I think you could actually freeze frame any shot of this game, and it kinda speaks for itself. The cutscenes? Even more impressive. Moving on, this game wants to be a third-person shooter with the camera moving to first-person when you're shooting from cover. Wait, it's third-person and first-person? Wow! What cover, you say? Well, that's easy. In order to, not confuse the player of where he might take cover, the game does that for you. You see these circles on the ground? Those are your cover spots. You wanna take cover somewhere else? Tough luck. Oh, I almost forgot. Let me show you the first thing this game does when you boot it up. Again, for the first time. Do you want to load the game? Out of morbid curiosity and somewhat scared, I pressed yes. Oh, okay. Thanks for asking. Shockingly enough, neither Will Smith nor Martin Lawrence lended their voices for this game. Considering the whole budget of this production was probably $150, I can understand why that's the case. The actors who do voice these characters, though, didn't even make an attempt at a somewhat decent impression of their characters. And they should have at least tried, because you play in this game as Mike Lowry and Marcus Burnett. But as far as this game goes, that's just a small nitpick. You know what else would have been helpful in a video game? Some options menu where you can actually see the controls. They are nowhere to be found in any menu. The game does not prompt you at any time on screen of which buttons do what. You practically have to play a guessing game. I started this game's version of a tutorial, which is a shooting range. All well and good. Until 2 minutes later, when I was yelled at by the instructor, "Now press the zoom button."
Think you're pretty good, huh? Let's see how you get on with these. Press the zoom button to get a closer look.
Okay, what's the zoom button? I pressed every single button on my keyboard and not one of them was the zoom button. Well, I guess no zoom for me then. The only saving grace of this game is that you can finish it in under 5 hours, so at least the torture is not too much to bear. Okay, I admit I'm being a bit too harsh on this game. It's not like it was the worst gaming experience of my life. And don't get me wrong, but these outdated graphics, the bad voice acting and the whole silliness of the game actually amused me, even if that was definitely not the developer's intention. In this game, you play as both characters over alternating levels. And you know that by looking at what they're wearing. Mike is wearing a tank top and Marcos is wearing a jersey. Okay. Now, I gotta show you the most epic mechanic this game has. It's absolutely fantastic. You know the term video game logic, right? Well, this thing might have actually coined that term. So there's a disarm mechanic in this game that works simple enough. You just shoot the weapon out of the enemy's hands and it simply falls off. However, when you do that, the enemies automatically surrender, no matter how far you are from them. They are not hurt, you just shot their weapon, it fell, and they just gave up. What makes this absolutely perfect is the fact that after they surrender, they disappear in a couple of seconds. You shot my weapon, I'm out. And somehow dead. Oh, and by the way, that's the only way you can take the enemy's weapons, by shooting it out of their hands first. If you kill them without doing that, which will happen most of the time, the weapon disappears alongside them. Of course you can't take the weapon they dropped after they're killed, right? That would be rude. I have no idea what they were thinking with this game mechanic, because it's definitely not a bug. It happens every single time. What the was that in the movie? Oh, he's just reloading. He's reloading his gun. Okay. Now I gotta say, one level in particular I actually unironically enjoyed. It was in Act 3, 4, I don't know, where there's a sniping section. You're sitting safely on a rooftop and need to protect Marcus from waves of enemies as he's making his way through a dock. Maybe it's cause I'm a sucker for snipers in any shooter, but this section was actually cool and it was really satisfying sniping the enemies one by one. Would I recommend you play this? Not at all. But I've had worse days in my life. Remember when Ubisoft made cool games? I'm only joking, they still make some good games. On my third day, I decided to revisit a game that I know I definitely played at the time, but I couldn't remember anything about it. So let's see if this 2005 highly regarded movie tie-in still holds up 20 years later. And if we were somehow in doubt that we're playing a movie tie-in, well, the full title of this game is Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie. So we're definitely good. When you first start playing this game, it's obvious the developers wanted to immerse the players as much as possible in order to keep it cinematic, for a lack of a better term. How? Well, by leaning on the less is more mantra and removing almost all HUD elements. You don't see any health bar, you don't have any kind of waypoint towards your next objective, you don't have a mission log, it's just you inside the game world. Which is quite ironic as we're talking about a Ubisoft game. For some of you, all these things I've mentioned might make you inclined to believe the game is obtuse and hard to navigate. Well, not in the slightest. The game is as linear as they come, and I haven't lost my way once throughout my entire playthrough of the game. And just so we're on the same page, this game being extremely linear is a plus in my book. As you might have guessed, we assume the role of Jack Driscoll, the movie's main character, played by Adrian Brody, who thankfully lended his voice for the video game alongside all the other cast members, most notably the fan favorite Jack Black.
Oh, I can't believe it! This is it. The Island of the Skull. What a place to shoot a picture. This movie's gonna make so much money.
Playing this now in 2025, I can see why fans claimed it was ahead of its time with some of its mechanics. What I really appreciated about
Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game movie,
is that it's not a mindless first-person shooter like a Serious Sam, for instance. You don't have access to unlimited ammo, and the game invites you to think about how you're gonna move forward through most sections of the game. You're anything but invincible as a regular guy moving through a jungle filled with monsters on steroids, so you can't just go Rambo style through the game. It takes one, maybe two hits from any Skull Island fauna to down you, so you have to outsmart them. For instance, if you want to move through this section of the game, your best option forward is to grab a spear, spike some bait, throw it right below a skull that's on fire, quickly grab another spear, fire it at the skull so that it breaks right on top of the bushes, and then everything catches fire. All enemies dispatched. And even if you could have sprinted past most of the enemies, the game smartly doesn't really let you do that, as your primary objective is to escort Anne Darrow, the female love interest, to safety. Another cool thing that I enjoy in basically all video games is when enemies attack each other. Here the jungle is fierce, and it's not everyone against you. It's everyone against everyone. But what turned this game from good to great is the fact that, Well, the gamer fantasy is fulfilled when you're finally playing as Kong. There is very few things more satisfying than dismantling 4 enemies at once with a swing as the mighty King Kong, when in just a few chapters earlier you are struggling with those same enemies as Jack. However, I would have preferred Kong to be even more of an unstoppable machine, rather than him being practically as vulnerable as Jack in some cases. I mean, when I first started playing as King Kong, I didn't know I had to defeat these enemies before climbing on this rock, and 2 little birdies killed me, which kinda took away from the fantasy. I mean, I get it when it happens in arguably one of the coolest fights you could imagine between King Kong and a freaking T-Rex, but I would have liked not to be downed 5 times by a bird until I understood exactly what I needed to do. All that aside, playing as King Kong is genuinely fun in this game. I mean, after all, playing a video game as King Kong can never be bad, so never mind. The gameplay is a mixture of mostly playing an inventive first-person shooter as Jack and third-person action game as King Kong. I have to admit, playing this game now only emphasized in me what I already knew about myself. The PS3/Xbox 360 era of video games, which, by the way, this game was actually a launch title for, is and forever will be my favorite. So today felt good. Tomorrow, let's feel like shit again. Boy, those Marvel contracts are something else, cause they actually got Robert Downey Jr. to reprise his role as Iron Man in this game. A completely bored version of him, but still. Unfortunately, they didn't get Iron Man to reprise his role as Iron Man in this game. I'm only kidding. So when I started this game, I thought you can't take any damage in the tutorial, because nowhere on screen do you see your health. You do see a completely irrelevant flamethrower bar that doesn't do anything. Well, in order to test my theory, I restarted the game on hard, the highest difficulty, and did this. Oh, okay, so you can die. Well, if you try your hardest. Seeing how this game started, curiosity got the better of me and I wanted to see if I can finish the first level on normal, without killing anyone and without pressing any button that's not absolutely necessary for me to move on. I'll speed it up, but look what happened. Well, see where I died? Guys, this was just at the end of the level. And on normal difficulty as well. On the easiest difficulty, there's no question you can do this. Precisely 20 seconds later when I started the next mission, and by the way, I decided to play this game on easy for obvious reasons, I died. So that's some great balancing for you. Oh well, I knew this game had to be frustrating as well as boring, so I welcomed it. At least the game gives you more than one weapon, which saves your experience a little bit. I don't know how they managed to make the most basic machine gun more satisfying than shooting actual lasers from the palm of your hands, but they did. Shooting homing rockets through your chest though is kinda cool, I gotta give them that. But of course, that has the most limited ammo. Now, in one of the next missions called Weapons Transport, you need to escort an enemy truck? Kind of. You just need to be careful not to destroy it. I mean, okay, but no one else is firing at the truck, so you basically just have to follow it and not die. Which, again, is quite trivial, just like the tutorial level. However, the truck stops about 4 times for literally no other reason than to make you actually kill some enemies this time, rather than ignoring them, as you do when the truck is moving. It always stops at a base full of enemies, which you'll need to kill, and then the truck will leave. Or, if you're taking too much time, it gets bored and drives anyway. So it's somewhat of a reverse escort mission. I don't know, man, I can't find the logic in this game, and it kinda actually hurts my brain trying to do so I won't anymore. This reverse engineered escort mission culminates in, naturally, a boss fight. A boss fight in which you're stapled to the ground for some reason now. The battle is just tedious and nothing else, as you're at no time in any actual danger of dying. You slowly chip away at the health bar of the boss when he's not shielded, then he grapples straight through the cave, then he comes back, rinse and repeat. Yay, let's play some more Iron Man. In the next mission you need to destroy some bunkers or something, but the funny part is how the metal buildings actually receive damage. The turrets on top of the bunkers receive damage as usual. If you shoot a rocket at them, they're instantly gone. However, those rules don't apply to the metal and concrete made bunkers, because why would they? It doesn't matter what you hit them with, but how many times. So you could shoot like 8 rockets that normally do extremely high amounts of damage and would probably level a small city, or you could just punch the bunkers a couple of times. Sure, why not? This Iron Man game is regarded as one of the worst movie tie-in games of all time, and I kinda see why. Unfortunately, there's no saving grace for this cash grab attempt. It's not even that kind of game that's so bad it's good. It's just bad. You're not having fun, nothing makes you want to play more, and it just feels like a chore. This is exactly the kind of game that older parents have in mind when they come up with stuff like, "Stop wasting your life with that video game nonsense." And honestly, if this is what they see you play, after you beg them as a 10-year-old to spend $60 on because you love the characters and the movie so much, who could blame them? This right here is the best movie tie-in game of all time. Period. Well, maybe semicolon. I know Mr. Bond will have some fair arguments in this battle, but that's not what we're here for right now. So I spent my entire day with arguably the best movie game ever made. The Chronicles of Riddick broke the rule that was almost ubiquitous among the industry. The movie is good, the game sucks. Well, Vin Diesel turned that rule completely on its head, as the movie sits at a staggering 38 Metascore on IMDb, and the game is, well, regarded as one of the greats. And we'll get to why is that in a second. The cast of this game starts with the man himself, Vin Diesel, who clearly came in the booth ready to give his all and not treat this project as a side gig. In case you didn't know, he's a nerd like us and loves video games. The list goes on with big names including Michael Rooker, Ron Perlman, John DiMaggio, who by the way is basically Marcus Phoenix as a prison guard in this game, and Mr. Pimp My Ride himself, Exhibit. Now, before you even start a new game, you're hit by what is, in my opinion, the coolest in-game menu you'll ever see in your life. And it's for genuinely no other reason than to look cool as f***. All the footage you saw of this game so far was me playing the original game released alongside the movie in 2004. What you're gonna see from here on out is me playing the remastered version of the game, which was included in a 2009 release named Assault on Dark Athena, which included the sequel as well as the remastered version of the original. I'm positive I'm not the only one, but I'm a complete sucker for prison escapes in any medium. Any book, movie, TV show or game that revolves around escaping a prison has me instantly hooked. Playing it now in 2025, the game reminds me of a lot of video game greatness crammed into one. It feels like a mixture of older and newer titles like Half-Life, Thief, Dishonored, Splinter Cell, Deus Ex, and even some Metro. As you'd expect from a game in which you must escape from a prison that makes Alcatraz feel like a mildly inconvenient sleepover, there's a lot of stealth involved. When Riddick crouches in this game, it does way more than just lowering the camera. The crouch button activates stealth mode, which allows you to move silently, and when you're in the shadows, you're practically invisible. This is indicated by the edges of the screen turning blue, letting you know that no one can see you. When you're in stealth mode, you can kill anyone from behind with just the click of a button. In the starting hours of the game, you as a player are somewhat at a disadvantage too in the dark, because, well, you can't see shit. But those odds are very soon going to tilt in your favor in a major way. About 4 hours into the game, Riddick acquires his famous eye shine power, which, you guessed it, allows him to see in the dark. Now, I absolutely love the fact that from here on out, I started to shoot at every light source possible, making the dark hallways my playground and saying this out loud every 2 minutes.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally?
But this is not just a stealth game. It's also an action-packed shooter when you want it to be. Not in all cases, but in most, the choice is yours. You can shoot your way through the game, or you can be stealthy and methodical, because the game reacts at what you're doing. Is there a huge message on the wall that says no touching allowed? Punch an inmate, see what happens. And the choices do not end here. You can approach some main missions in way more ways than one. For instance, in this mission you need to get dragged into the security room one way or another. And you can't just punch a guard in the face cause they'll shoot you dead in 2 seconds. But you have 2 options to get their attention. You can become the champion of the fighting ring from the prison block, or you can get caught with drugs on you. The choice is yours, and each one obviously takes a different approach. I usually hate ambiguity in some games, but here I thought it added so much to the experience. After all, you're in a prison for the first time in your life. It would be awkward to have a waypoint showing you where to find your next objective. The game balances ambiguity in a perfect way, and it never made me feel frustrated. Just curious. The more people you talk to, the more information becomes available to you. If you want to go straight to business, you can of course, but you lose some of the magic of this experience. If I have to find a nitpick for this game though, there's something I found a bit odd. The enemies with weapons equipped are somewhat easier to defeat than unarmed enemies. That is, if they're alone of course. Because if they have a weapon, you just need to stay close to them, they'll try to fire, you push the attack button, and with a very cool animation mind you, Riddick makes them shoot themselves in the head. Now for the unarmed enemies, you have to brawl. And that could be a lot trickier than it sounds. If you're not careful, you could easily get knocked out, so I found that a bit unbalanced. Oh, and I expected once I got a shiv to slash through my unarmed enemies way easier, but it's basically the same as punching them. I mean, I get why it takes 10 punches to knock down a dude, but when I stab them 7 or 8 times in the head, it feels it's a bit too long for a regular enemy to drop. Regardless of how tough these prisons are, I'm still stabbing you straight in the face 5 times and you're not going down. That's just a small nitpick though. All in all, I loved experiencing this game, for the first time by the way, and this might turn out to be the best day of the week. And I feel like calling this game the best movie tie-in adaptation of all time actually does the game a disservice. It's not the one-eyed king in the land of the blind. It's the night vision enhanced monster that makes you scared of the dark. I don't know how much sense that made, but it sounded cool. Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I found it pretty hard to divide 7 into a round number, so I decided to pick 3 good ones, 3 bad ones, and one that's maybe both. Critics think it's shit, and players think it's good, actually. So let's dive in. Mom, I want Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter combined. But we have Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter combined at home, my child. I'm only kidding, I know it's a pretty popular franchise, at least in book form. But you gotta admit, it has some big Temu energy. So while the books enjoyed quite a lot of success, the movie, although it was profitable at the box office according to Wikipedia, fans and critics didn't like the movie at all. On IMDb, it sits at a 38 Metascore and... wait, what the I swear I didn't do it on purpose, but apparently I could have named this video I played games based on movies that have 38 on Metascore. Anyway, moving on, we're here to talk about the game, so let's do just that. This was my first playthrough of the title, as I never cared about Eragon in any way, shape or form. Now, even though the first minutes of this game gave me Fable vibes, which was good, it otherwise started kinda rough. The clunky movement through the tutorial and awful visuals hit you first, so I thought, well, this is gonna suck. However, the more I played this game, I have to admit it kinda won me over. Now, don't get me wrong, it's no Gears of War, Half-Life 2 or Oblivion, which all came out the same year as this in 2006 by the way, but it wouldn't be necessarily fair to compare it with those games. All in all, if you're a fan of the IP, I can definitely see why you'd enjoy this quite a bit. The thing that surprised me most in this game is the complexity of the combat. For your average hack and slash movie tie-in, I expected something along the lines of a light and heavy attack and maybe a block. Well, 5 or 6 hours in, the game still introduced me to new combat mechanics. You have at your disposal the aforementioned heavy and light attacks that you can combine in multiple ways to pull off some cool combos, but you also have your bow at your disposal, which has infinite ammo. Now, the coolest part of the combat is when magic is introduced. magic that you can use in multiple ways. First of all, telekinesis. You basically can use the force in this game? Well, apparently you can, because even when you activate your fury attack, as it is called, your sword kinda turns into a lightsaber. But for real, pushing your enemies with telekinesis into a burning building or pulling archers off ledges is extremely satisfying. And even if they're not close to some hazard, using telekinesis makes them lose their balance, and that gives you an opening for an attack. As you continue playing, in further levels you can add magic power to your bow, unleashing devastating attacks that hits all the enemies in the area of effect. Oh, and this game has a version of a parry. If you press the block button right before the enemy hits you, that makes them vulnerable and you can grab them into a lock and punch them till they're gone. Another cool thing, when you see these barrels filled with spears, you can use your magic button on them and you suddenly become a blonde version of Yondu. So as you can see, the combat is quite complex for this kind of game and surprisingly entertaining. Come on guys, tell me video game things. What do we put in this next? Players have to keep their balance when walking on tight ledges or something? Nice! You know that's exactly how this thing right here made its way into the game. It always amuses me when I see random mechanics that are definitely out of place or mandatory checkboxes. I think this might have been the only instance where Eragon made this balancy animation, even though it was clearly safe for him to walk. I mean, this one seems safe enough, right? But not this. And don't get me wrong, the fact that you can't fall to your death in this game no matter where you are or what you do is perfect. Because if you could, this might have been the most frustrating game in existence. What's interesting though is that the enemies not only can fall through the environment, but it's actually the best way to get rid of them where you have fire next to you, or a ledge, or water for some reason. I guess the ogres have that GTA 3 main character DNA in them. Now, what sometimes hinders the game in my opinion are the convoluted environments, and when the camera is not controllable by the player, that's quite a big minus in my book. I was struggling at some areas and I even died, by fire to be fair, right in this particular section where I had no idea where to go. But overall the game is extremely linear, so it's quite hard to become lost. Of course, an Eragon game wouldn't be complete without your dragon. See, I already became an expert in Eragon. Fittingly, you play a couple of missions on top of your dragon, which is quite fun, I'm not gonna lie. They're decent at best, but these sections don't overstay their welcome. And even though you're in the air on top of a dragon, the game still remains linear. Basically, you just control your dragon in order to not hit anything on your way. When you do hit something though, it's quite funny how the physics work in this game. Overall, it's impossible not to feel awesome when you're riding on top of a dragon. So no matter how bad it is, it's still good. Like Zack. Guys, girls, I don't even know where to begin with this one, I swear. First of all, for those of you who don't know, the Catwoman tie-in game released alongside, obviously, its movie counterpart, is regarded as one of the worst movie games ever made. After playing it, I would argue it's one of the worst video games ever made, period. In fact, I'm actually gonna dedicate an entire video to it soon, because this needs a full retrospective treatment. In my latest video, I played the worst Spider-Man game ever made, which you should check out after this video, by the way, and yeah, this will be added to that playlist for sure. Now, let me set the stage for you a little bit. Before even starting this game, the install menu has some sound effects that will give us a glimpse into what we're in for. So, as you can see, the game did have the license to use the likeness of lead actress Halle Berry. I guess they just didn't use it. The voice performance is not hers though, as that mantle was sadly taken by Jennifer Hale. If you don't know who she is, the only thing I could possibly ask you is do not judge her by her performance in this game. For having won multiple awards for her performances, being in Mass Effect, Rivet in Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and many more, here we get this.
I'll claw my way to the top. You need to be recycled. If there's one thing I hate about shopping after hours, it's competition.
And you know what's the worst part? I could tell you the voice acting is the best part of this game and the lie detector machine wouldn't go off one bit. This is not a video game. This is an endurance test. It's torture, and I don't think I've ever been so frustrated playing a video game in my life. First of all, the real enemy in this game? The controls. You have like 4 controls for movement and 4 directional attacks, if that makes any sense. And the developers knew you wouldn't have the slightest idea what to do or where to go next, so the entire first chapter of this game has tutorial messages at every step you take. And it's not entirely helpful, they were written by a 5-year-old. Boot the bad guy through the glass. Push the combat controls at your enemies to kick them into next week. There's one more bad guy to put out of his misery. Send the cowering creep crashing through that door. Okay. Yeah, so about that, apparently the only way you can progress through some areas is by kicking enemies into dumpsters? Because why not? Oh, and I genuinely burst out laughing at a point where I couldn't get one enemy to hit the dumpster, and he did this. If you're a competent gamer, for lack of a better term, and for some reason you wanna feel like an absolute idiot, just play Catwoman. I struggled at almost every single chapter not having the slightest clue where to go next, and when I figured it out, well, then you actually need to be able to do that. I know you're looking at this gameplay and you think I'm maybe having a stroke every 30 seconds, but I swear I tried my best. Now I'll speed this part up, but it honestly took me 15 minutes just to get past this horribly designed area. So I need to grapple to this, then make the obvious wall jump. Well, good luck, cause you'll need it. No, really, I think it's purely luck-based, because I sometimes was able to make that basic jump, the next time I pressed the exact same button combination, I didn't. I knew beforehand this game was bad. I knew what to expect, and it somehow still blew me away. It's like they went out of their way to make this as frustrating as humanly possible. I mean, it's pretty obvious they wanted to replicate the movement from the Prince of Persia games, with the wall jumping, swinging from pole to pole and whatnot, but no. I honestly could not comprehend how you could ever have fun playing Catwoman. The traversal is absolutely torture, with zero satisfaction when you actually pull the move they wanted you to. The combat is practically non-existent. You just press the attack button and kick enemies until they hit what dumpster or wall the game wants you to hit. The graphics are... Why does she glow blue in a room that's completely yellow lighted? Well, at least the voice acting is funny, even though it's definitely not trying to be. Oh, and after this game, the studio in charge, Argonaut Games, was closed. Shocker. Guys, that brings us to a close. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Please like the video, subscribe, comment, all that YouTube dance, and please find things to enjoy in your life every single day.